tale begins with our main character, Jung Hae-yi, an average high school student with a tendency to fear getting into any trouble. Hae-yi attended his class as usual, but fate had something else in store for him. The class proceeded as planned until suddenly, the most beautiful girl in school, Zia Zidong, entered the classroom. The class was even more surprised when Zia began searching for Hae-yi and later approached him. She revealed that she was expecting his child, leaving the entire class astonished, including Hae-yi, who had no clue about the situation. Hae-yi, now the envy of every guy in the class, felt overwhelmed and decided to make a hasty exit, unable to comprehend the unfolding scenario. A mob was formed by the students, and Hae-yi was chased by them. Later, Zia was promised by Hae-yi to meet on the rooftop to discuss the pregnancy issue. He hurried down the hallway, facing a challenge from male students whom he managed to handle swiftly. However, he found himself powerless against some strong female students like Tang Xuan, the athletics team captain, who slapped him out of jealousy. To add to the confusion, another girl named Lin Yuan suddenly appeared, claiming to be his children's mother and begging him to come home. Hae-yi, not recognizing her, faced the furious mother and was chased all the way to the rooftop, accompanied by the two girls who asserted themselves as his lovers. In a state of confusion and anger, Hae-yi, on the rooftop, shouted that he didn't know any of these girls and even threatened to jump off to prove his innocence. Despite his plea, the mob did not believe him and rushed forward, leading Hae-yi to let go of the railings. As he descended towards his imminent demise, a pillar of light appeared from above, halting time itself. Instead of experiencing a forceful impact upon the ground, his body gently made contact with the earth. A pink goddess, her gaze fixed on Hae-yi, took hold of his collar. Shaking him vigorously, she berated him for consuming Cupid's chocolates. In the midst of her admonishment, Hae-yi's recollections were stirred. He remembered discovering a lone chocolate cake on the rooftop the previous day. Wanting to share the treat with the girls, he had brought it to them. Mei Tata, the goddess of love, clarified that partaking in Cupid's chocolates with a girl would implant false memories of being the deity's lover. Proudly, Mei Tata expressed her wish for Hae-yi's happiness. However, to Hae-yi, this situation meant that he was bound for life. Mei Tata conveyed that he only needed to fulfill Hae-yi's most desired wish to break the magic spell. Afterward, he could live as he wished. Time returned to normal, and the crowd on the rooftop hurried downstairs to check for his body, unaware that he was hiding from them. In the midst of it all, Hae-yi recalled that he was supposed to meet Zia on the rooftop hours earlier. Fearing the worst, he hurried back to the top and discovered her crying alone. The next day, he took her to a clinic for a pregnancy test. He pumped his fist in the air with joy upon learning that the results were negative. Zia, feeling a sensation in her belly, became confused and swore something had moved. She pledged to ensure she'd become pregnant next time. However, Hae-yi declined and suggested taking her home instead. Later, they reached a lavish mansion where guards bowed respectfully to Zia. Recalling a false memory of Hae-yi proposing to her, she was rejected, but she expressed gratitude for his passionate feelings. Inside her mansion, Hae-yi learned from the housekeeper that Zia lived alone due to her father's infrequent visits. As Hae-yi was about to leave, a house guard burst into the living room after a school call about an incident with Zia. The guards beat him, but Zia, claiming love, promised to marry him even if he were poor. To escape the guards, she took him to her room, closing the door behind her. Pei, realizing their proximity, pressed his hand to her lips. Wanting to silence her, he stumbled back to her desk, where he saw a calendar from last year with her notes about enjoying meals with her father. Furious, Hae-yi blasted open the door, seized the phone from the housekeeper, and screamed at Zia's father about being the one responsible. However, her father hung up. Soon after, an army of helicopters and black cars arrived, bringing the master of the house himself. Trembling in fear, Hae-yi found himself in the presence of Zia's father, who was accompanied by armed soldiers. The father ordered the men to put away their weapons and instructed them to beat Hae-yi until Zia provided him with the negative test results from the hospital. Confused about his outburst on the phone, Pei trudged forward, looking up at Zia's father. He was told that if he hadn't taken the blame, he wouldn't even be welcomed home by his daughter, who needed his affection more than Heiyi's luxurious house and gifts. Those words resonated with everyone present in the mansion. With that, Heiyi took his leave, running until his chest heaved heavily. To his surprise, he discovered he was just at the back door of Zia's house. Zia still appeared and thanked him with a kiss before mysteriously vanishing into thin air. Just then, Meitada made her entrance, perched on top of the ivy growing on the gate. She explained that she was able to break the spell by fulfilling Zia's most desired wish. The following day at school, Heiyi entered his classroom, thinking he went unnoticed. Zia approached his desk and invited him on a date. Heiyi nervously revealed his name, and using his powers, he stopped time to talk to Meitada. She explained that although her false memories were gone, she would still remember the past 2 days, and her current feelings wouldn't necessarily disappear. Reluctantly, Heiyi agreed to a date with Zia, but as they were about to leave, the door burst open. Knives flew towards Heiyi as a dark-haired girl, Zuli, thrust a sword near him, and then kissed him. Zia's mother scolded Zuli for coming all the way from America for a boy. The two women glared at each other until Zuli was knocked out and carried away by guards. Later, Heiyi revealed to Meitada that Zuli was his wild childhood friend, and Zia overheard. Despite the confusion, Zia decided to continue the date the next day. However, in the staircase, Heiyi unexpectedly bumped into Xuan, who slapped him and ended their relationship. Heiyi found himself irritated because he and Xuan were not acquainted. He disliked that a girl had the courage to initiate a breakup, and she asserted that no one could handle her with that attitude. After Meitada's advice that women usually mean it as a warning when they suggest breaking up, Heiyi thought he had deeply hurt her feelings. However, this assumption shattered when he witnessed Xuan imposing punishment on her athletics team. Confronting her, Heiyi tried to grab the holes from her hands, inadvertently drenching her in water. Instead of retaliating, Xuan grunted and walked away. The following day, Heiyi woke up late for his date, but Zuli locked him in his room. Climbing over to the next apartment, he bribed a little girl named Yu with sweets to use her door. Although he arrived late for the date, Zia forgave him and suggested going for a drink at a cafe. The atmosphere was quiet and awkward, unlike the dreamy confession Heiyi had imagined. In his virgin imagination, Zia was a princess gracefully and adorably confessing her love with a gift, while he was a prince. However, Zia was embarrassed on her first ever date, worrying Heiyi, who pressed his hand on her forehead, asking if she had a fever. When they realized their faces were inches from each other, they pulled away in embarrassment and fell into silence again. To ease the tension, Heiyi suggested going to the anime festival. Despite taking photos of cosplayers, they were still tiptoeing around each other. To Heiyi's surprise, he spotted Xuan in a cute cat-made outfit, posing for cameras. The moment they saw each other, both were shocked. From a distance, Xuan observed Heiyi and the girls from her athletics team. She led Heiyi and Zia away from the crowd into a private room. There, she explained how appearing in her cute outfit could harm her reputation as the tough alpha woman at school. Despite her struggle, Heiyi, not understanding the situation, encouraged her to reveal her true self to others. Just as they were talking, the announcer announced the start of the female cosplay competition over the speakers. Unfortunately, Xuan usually went solo and didn't qualify to enter. Zia proposed a solution, the three of them forming a group for the competition. This suggestion excited Xuan, transforming the reluctant Heiyi into a cute trap bunny main character named Zuli. Unbeknownst to them, Zuli, hiding in another stall, snapped a photo of Heiyi from behind and found his cuteness appealing. Xuan, Kazuya, and Heiyi, running to her, discovered that her costume was sabotaged with holes. It was not only a clear act of sabotage, but also the first outfit she made for herself, leaving her heartbroken and prompting her to run away. This incident motivated Heiai to win the competition no matter what. Before taking the stage, he took a moment to plan, even taking a leak. Natada unexpectedly appeared, surprising Heiai as they were in the men's toilet. Her presence sparked inspiration, and she became involved in the plan. On stage, Heiai tripped nervously in front of the audience, but managed to turn it into a cute act that charmed everyone. Meanwhile, Zia frantically searched for Xuan all over the place, but couldn't find her anywhere. At the main event, Heiai found himself standing alone on stage eventually, despite his efforts to delay the performance until Zia located Xuan. She sang a little song to the audience, who didn't appreciate it as they were eager to see Xiaoyila. Unbeknownst to everyone, Zia was just above the stage, observing everything with sad eyes. The audience's disappointment led Heiai to reveal Zia's pain, intending to keep her identity hidden. Surprisingly, he confessed that he genuinely loved this vulnerable side of her, finding it the most authentic. In the midst of calling out to her, Xuan fell from above. However, before reaching the bottom, a strange light enveloped both her and Heiai, transforming their outfits, and she landed safely in his arms. The audience was so captivated by the unexpected turn of events that the duo was declared the winners on the spot, even though the competition was originally intended to be all-female. In the nick of time, Meitada managed to rescue them with her magic. From above, a relieved sigh escaped her when she observed that both of them were unharmed. Xuan, however, harbored doubts about magic and turned to Heiai for an explanation, only to receive no satisfactory answer. Backstage, Zueli, consumed by jealousy, overheard some girls chatting about Heiai's cuteness. Driven by anger, she approached them with a menacing glare, dragging her huge blade. The girls fell silent and screamed when she attacked. After the show, Hei and Xuan found themselves in the dressing room, engaging in a dispute over who would change first. When Xuan pushed Xuan, a peculiar incident occurred. Their clothes disappeared. An exasperated Xuan ejected him from the room along with his previous attire. After getting dressed, Xuan expressed gratitude to Meitada for saving them, causing her to blush. Struck by the intricacies of the human mind, she found Xuan's kind eyes perplexing. Later, in the hallway, Zia timidly approached, inquiring if they could go home. Ai couldn't believe that Xuan had forgotten about her and invited Xuan along. Despite feeling somewhat tsundere about it, Ai eventually sorted out her feelings. However, upon reaching her door, she discovered that nobody was waiting outside. Meanwhile, goodbyes were exchanged by Heiai and Zia at an intersection because Heiai intended to have a conversation with Xuan. This made Zia a bit jealous. When Xuan finally arrived, he called out to her and asked if she'd like to stay at his place for a while. Unfortunately, things didn't go well because Zia was a bit reserved, and Xuan, not considering the situation, brushed off her reaction, assuming the tension had already lifted. Later that night, he visited the apartment of a hot blonde woman. She welcomed him, mentioning how long it had been since his last visit. Heiai's hand was seized by the woman, leading him into the room. Later, he discovered that the attractive woman was none other than his teacher, Miss Jai. Their encounter triggered a trip down memory lane. In the past, Heiai and Zueli were in constant competition for the top grade. However, she could never surpass him. Frustrated, Zueli would chase and hit Heiai. To avoid her beatings, Heiai intentionally lowered his grades, which made her happy and confident. Things took a turn in middle school when Zueli, over a megaphone, announced a deal. If Heiai didn't secure the top score, he would have to do everything she asked and accompany her to America. Not wanting that outcome, Heiai gave his best effort and claimed the top spot. Misinterpreting Heiai's actions, Zueli believed he hated her and ran away in tears, shouting that he would regret his choices. Meanwhile, Miss Jai, exhausted from the antics, passed out. The next day, she teased Heiai by affectionately calling him darling in public. During Xuan's team training session, Heiai made a bold bet against all the girls, challenging them to obey his commands if he achieved the highest score in the entire school. Confident in their abilities, the girls gladly accepted, showering him with insults, assuming an easy victory, especially with one of their members being in the top 5. Their confidence didn't faze Haeyi at all. Instead, he stirred them up even more. From that point on, he put in extra effort, studying as much as he could, delving into piles of books late into the night. On the eve of the exam, as rain fell outside his window, he noticed Zuli standing alone, muttering that he's back. Haeyi, seeing her distressed, grabbed an umbrella and hurried down to her. She looked shattered, trembling in front of him, feeling utterly worthless because her ex-boyfriend had returned. Gently, he wiped away the tears running down her face and reassured her that everything would be okay. Haeyi then put his arm around her, pulling her close to his chest, letting go of the umbrella as they both got drenched in the midnight rain. After Zuli's mother expressed gratitude to Haeyi for looking after her daughter, she shared that Zuli was currently feeling a bit unstable and wouldn't be able to attend school for some time. The following day, the rain had ceased, and Haeyi effortlessly breezed through the exams. He later playfully irritated the girls from the athletics team. On the day the test results were to be revealed, Haeyi confidently entered the gym where the team was practicing, proudly displaying the maid outfit he wanted Shuin to wear for 2 weeks as per their bet. This revelation surprised Shuin so much that she accidentally dropped the ball she was holding. Throughout the time, Shuin had been concerned about Haeyi's fatigue from excessive studying and couldn't fathom the reason behind his sudden bet. However, when the results were unveiled, everyone was shocked to discover that Haeyi had secured the top rank. The team accused him of being a pervert and a cheat, even prompting the faculty to verify his grades. Disappointingly for the accusers, there was no evidence of cheating. When the girls left, a teacher commented on how Haeyi's sudden rise to the top startled the entire faculty, as they hadn't realized he possessed such potential. In the gym, students were captivated by Xuan's cute maid outfit, as she happily distributed posters to recruit new team members. The crowd couldn't get enough of her, eagerly taking pictures and swooning every time she flashed them an adorable smile. Haeyi gently placed his hands on her shoulders, offering a slight encouragement to boost her confidence in dressing up that way in front of the school. He expressed the idea that she should continue with this attire for 2 weeks, believing it would help balance her tough personality with a newfound cute side. Meanwhile, Lin Yuan observed them from a distance, feeling a tinge of jealousy. She whispered to herself, believing that Haeyi had neglected her and their children. On the rooftop, Haeyi found himself caught between Xia and a conversation about breaking a spell. Although she couldn't see the goddess, Xia stared at Haeyi. He casually claimed to be on the rooftop to cool down, acting unfazed. Chuan entered dramatically, tossing the maid outfit Haeyi had given her at his face, complaining about its size. Xia, who had selected the outfit, slipped away in embarrassment, leaving them alone. Haeyi, trying to defuse the situation, acted cute to avoid Chuan's anger. Shu chuckled at his antics. As she turned away, she expressed her happiness, acknowledging that, despite its slightly perverted nature, Haeyi had made her feel joy. Afterward, in the hallway, Haeyi was asked by Meitada about the guy Zuli had mentioned the previous night in the rain. It was disclosed by Haeyi that the person Zuli was quietly talking about was her ex-boyfriend. According to him, Zuli wouldn't be in her current situation if it weren't for him. Following their discussion, 2 children approached Haeyi from behind, joyfully calling him Daddy, as they playfully pushed him to the floor. Lin Yuan, standing behind the children, was smiling at both her kids and Haeyi, who was supposed to be the father. Haeyi experienced an unexpected turn of events because he hadn't had any previous romantic encounters. This revelation surprised him so much that it felt as if his soul had momentarily left his body. However, Meitada brought him back to face reality. The 2 children, Xiaming and Seo Hong, resembled Haeyi and Lin Yuan so closely that they could be mistaken for carbon copies. They gazed up at Haeyi with innocent eyes as he knelt down to talk to them. Haeyi instructed them to call him Uncle John when they were outside and promised to meet them at the school gate with their mother, offering sweets as a reward. After the children left, Meitada explained that given enough time, magic could fulfill a person's wishes, turning their fantasies into reality. This meant that the two children were magically created in physical form. Yuan received a phone call instructing her to come to the office. She asked the kids to stay put while she followed the order, but they decided to play around and ended up getting separated. Later, she apologized to Hayayi for losing the kids. Hayayi reassured her that nothing bad would happen and suggested they split up to search for them. Outside the school building, the little girl Sio's home was found by Zia, who unknowingly assisted her in searching for her Uncle John. Little did Zia know that the uncle was actually Hayayi. Meanwhile, the mischievous little boy Xiaming was causing trouble all over the school, pretending to be a hero defeating imaginary demons. Eventually, he sneaked into the girls' dressing room. Hayayi noticed Xiaming through a slit in the door, thinking he would get into trouble again. He decided to walk away, but Tang Xuan caught him and accused him of being a pervert. Soon, the entire school was aware of the situation. Wanting to help, Xiaming rushed to the rescue, but his attempt went awry, accidentally pulling down Xuan's skirt. Xuan, upset by the incident, directed her anger towards Hayayi. The girls in the school punished him for the perceived misbehavior. Meanwhile, Yuan patiently waited at the school gate until the crowd dispersed, leaving her alone. Unexpectedly, Hayayi appeared on the horizon with both kids safely by his side. They praised him, with a girl patting him on the back, although he suggested that a shoulder rub would be more comfortable. Unable to see the goddess, Yuan thought Hayayi was asking for a shoulder rub from her and got up to massage him. So, a different topic was brought up by Hayayi to change the mood. He made her see sense by asking her to do simple math based on the kids' ages. If they were born 7 to 8 years ago, that would make him a new dad 12 years old when they had them. However, Yuan didn't see the problem in that and still believed that they were their kids. Meitada explained that if this continued, all the people he interacted with would also be affected by the magic, blurring their memories. This was evident when Yuan's mother threw a sharp knife above his head. The moment they arrived at the door, she grabbed his collar and threatened him to address her properly as mother, not man. She waved the dangerous blade around, calling him a scoundrel for not coming for several days. Invited into their small, shabby apartment, Hayayi joined them for a meal. After dinner, while cleaning up, Hayayi and Yuan's hands accidentally brushed, causing them to blush and shy away. Once the chores were finished, Hayayi assisted the kids with their assignments and put them to sleep in the living room. While listening to the evening news, Hayayi was interrupted by Yuan, who, in a short nightgown, invited him to stay the night, as it seemed her mother wouldn't be coming home. However, Hayayi's plans changed when he received a phone call from Zia, who asked him out on a date at Haiyiju Amusement Park on Sunday. Agreeing to the date, Yuan overheard and insisted that he also take her and the kids along. Reluctantly accepting this unexpected responsibility, Hayayi called Zia to cancel, but lied, promising not to be late. On Sunday, Hayayi aimed to make both dates successful. He planned to start the operations an hour apart, taking Yuan and the kids to the Ferris wheel at 9 a.m. During the ride, Hayayi, scared of the height, inadvertently hugged a random lady's leg, earning disapproval from Yuan. After rushing through all the amusement park rides in 30 minutes, Hayayi felt sick and had to throw up at a nearby bulletin board. Despite Meitada showering him with snacks, Hayayi declined and rushed to his meeting spot in an action movie style. Anticipating Zia to be fashionably late, Hayayi was surprised to find her waiting by the fountain when he arrived. Observing Zia's shy reaction, Hayayi couldn't shake the suspicion that she was on the verge of confessing her feelings to him. Their moment, however, was abruptly interrupted by a street photographer eager to capture their candid connection. Both Hayayi and Zia, caught off guard, displayed an awkwardness that hung in the air. Sensing the discomfort, the photographer encouraged them to appear more intimate, assuming they were a couple. Playing along, Zia pressed her chest against Hayayi for the camera. Unfortunately, a sudden gust of wind whisked away her hat. In a chivalrous move, Hayayi swiftly caught it, prompting Zia to express her gratitude with a gentle kiss, standing on her toes. As the day unfolded, Hayayi found himself reflecting on whether Cupid's chocolates were at play again. However, Meitada dismissed the notion, bluntly calling him a dumbass and asserting that Zia's feelings had nothing to do with the magical confections. Upon realizing the time, Hayayi hurriedly searched for a gift. However, he unexpectedly bumped into Zhongdong, an old friend. Zhongdong informed him that Zuli's ex-boyfriend had returned from America. Despite Hayayi having feelings for Zuli, Dong persuaded him to swear that he would protect her from any harm. Just then, Hayayi encountered Chuan, who was shopping with her friends. An argument ensued between them. Meanwhile, Zia urgently called Hayayi, putting his life at stake. Hayayi requested Xuan to keep Zia company while he returned to Yun. Wanting to lift the spirits of the kids, Hayayi arrived with a stuffed teddy bear. To bring joy, he participated in a children's quiz. Pei, showing remarkable prowess, answered all the questions, causing his competitors to give up. Even the host felt intimidated. Hayayi emerged victorious, winning a meal voucher as the prize. After that, the kids were treated to ice cream by Hayayi. From a discreet corner, Hayayi and Yuan observed them. Later, they enjoyed a conversation over a drink and ice cream. Yuan remarked on Hayayi's sweetness in taking care of the kids despite having no income. She mentioned that he reminded her of someone introverted, much like a person she knew well. Hayayi promptly caught on, realizing she was referring to her father. In the midst of the interrogation, Hayayi delicately inquired about Yuan's father, his words inadvertently bringing tears to her eyes. Frustration bubbled within her, leading to a forceful slam of the table as she tactfully avoided addressing the question. Determined to sidestep the issue, Yuan opted to go shopping with the kids. Observing this scene, Zion Yuan, who happened to be strolling nearby, noticed Yuan's reddened eyes, a telltale sign of recent tears. Concern etched their faces, and without hesitation, they assumed Hayayi was the cause of her distress. Swiftly, they confronted him, their suspicions guiding them. However, as the impromptu interrogation unfolded, it became apparent that Hayayi's intentions were rooted in genuine concern for Yuan. The realization prompted a change of heart in Zion Yuan, leading them to release Hayayi from their makeshift judgment. As Hayayi boarded a departing bus, the two girls, Yuan and Zia, watched his departure. Curiosity lingered as Yuan turned to Zia, questioning the decision to let him go so easily. Zia, in response, acknowledged Hayayi's compassionate nature, asserting that, in the face of Yuan's need for assistance, she couldn't have restrained him, even if she had desired to do so. Meanwhile, apologies were offered by Hayayi to Yuan for having crossed the line earlier. Yuan comprehended that Hayayi had only been concerned for her. With understanding in her expression, she smiled. Hayayi gestured to the photographer, beckoning him to join them. He requested a group photo be taken. The photographer, recognizing Hayayi, was taken aback when he heard the kids refer to him as Daddy. This led him to assume that Hayayi might be involved in an affair with the attractive girl from earlier. At home, gratitude was expressed by Yuan to Hayayi for his actions. However, a cautionary note was added, advising him never to bring up such matters in front of the children. Yuan's gaze bore into Hayayi's soul like a knife. Reflecting on their group photo, Hayayi recalled Meitada's words about false memories having some connection to reality. This fueled his determination to investigate those around him and discover the truth. The following day, Hayayi visited Yuan's elementary school and attempted to locate her homeroom teacher by entering the faculty room in a rather clumsy manner. As expected, the entire faculty displayed hostility, on the verge of confronting him physically. However, he managed to slip away and coincidentally encountered Yuan's homeroom teacher in the hallway. The teacher shared that, during her time as a student teacher, Yuan's father would consistently pick her up after classes. Both Yuan and herself were described as cheerful and outgoing. However, one day, Yuan's father left her with a simple reminder to be a good girl and walked away, never to return. It was revealed that Yuan's parents had divorced. plunging her into a spiral of depression and isolation from the world. Upon learning this, Haoyi asked the teacher for Yuan's father's address, but his request was met with an obvious failure. As a last resort, Haoyi decided to break into the police station to gather data on Lin's father. He began sneaking inside, turning off the lights to blind the guard. He opened the door quietly and crept behind the guard to access the files. Unfortunately, things didn't go well. It turned out the guard Yan was a close friend of Haoyi. Yan helped him access Yun's records, but to their surprise, there was no trace of her father in the data. Yan explained to Haoyi that this usually meant Lin's father had left the country. Haoyi asked Yan to call him if he found anything else. Upon returning home, Haoyi found his parents waiting at the dinner table with a serious expression. They warned him that authorities might come knocking on their door. Moments later, a limousine ominously arrived in front of their apartment, and Zuli opened the door forcefully. She removed her gloves and, without hesitation, led Haoyi in front of his parents towards his room. There, she pushed him onto the bed, expressing a desire to sleep together. Haoyi managed to escape to the bathroom, where he waited for a few hours until Zuli fell asleep. Once she was asleep, Haoyi pulled the blanket close to her chest, reminiscing about the time when Zuli had given him sweets because she liked him. He recalled a moment when he decided to pull an all-nighter on his cold bedroom floor, and Yan unexpectedly called him. Yan informed him about finding 20 possible contact numbers of Yujia, exciting Haoyi enough to wake Zuli, who once again captured him. The following day in class, Haoyi phoned the numbers he had listed for his hearing. On the other end of the line, he encountered a bunch of eccentric people. Moving from one number to the next, he eventually reached the last one, belonging to Yujia. However, he didn't bother picking it up initially. Later in the day, after taking a nap, Haoyi called Yujia's number again. This time, he answered while he was at the grocery store. Startling him, Haoyi introduced himself as Yujia's son-in-law and casually mentioned they already had 2 kids. He urged Yujia to come home, but Yujia dropped an unexpected truth bomb: she wasn't actually his real daughter. Haoyi's heart sank upon hearing this, and it seemed the situation was beyond his control. Despite this, he decided to press forward and confront Yujia's mother. At their apartment, Haoyi overheard Sin and Yujia's mother arguing behind the open door. Sin yelled at her to discard Yujia's picture, claiming her real father was long dead. This caused Yuan to flee in tears with her children in tow. The next thing Haoyi knew, he was locked out of the apartment, with Sin refusing to talk to him. Witnessing the commotion, an old lady approached Haoyi and revealed the information he sought. Overwhelmed with grief and regret, Haoyi now knew the whole truth. Meitada revealed to Haoyi the truth about Yuan's family. Yuan's real father, Ziohe, happened to be a police officer. On the day of their civil wedding, Ziohe was called in for an emergency situation, leaving Zin, full of hope and expecting a child, eagerly awaiting his return. Sadly, her heart was shattered when he came back in a coffin, having lost his life in the line of duty. In the aftermath, Lin Eugene, who had been in love with Zin, took care of her and eventually married her. Despite facing opposition from his parents, who disowned him, he stood by Zin for years. However, the strain took its toll, leading to Lin Eugene breaking down and divorcing Zin with tears in his eyes. Yuan, who had only known Lin Eugene as her father, was deeply affected, and even years later, she still longed for his love. Haoyi, grappling with this newfound knowledge, felt at a loss on how to proceed. On the other hand, Meitada pointed out that Yuji had kept their personal phone number, showing ongoing concern for them over the years. This revelation triggered Haoyi's anger towards everyone involved. He was upset with Seo, he for committing to marriage despite the dangers of his job, and he harbored resentment towards Yujia for not enduring through the tough times in his marriage and leaving when things got difficult. Haoyi argued with Meitada, expressing his disagreement with their perspective. He believed that just because police officers have hazardous jobs doesn't mean they can't have a family. He commended Yujia for shouldering the burden of a broken family and raising Yuen as if she were his own, showcasing genuine love for many years. However, Haeyi, unwilling to listen to everything, left for home with a displeased expression. He isolated himself in his room, skipping dinner with his family. In a fit of anger, he even threw his belongings on the floor. The turning point came when he witnessed his group photo with Yuen and the kids falling to the ground. This sight made him sit down, realizing how foolish he had been to unleash his frustration on his parents. Meitada overheard his apology through an open window and attempted to uplift his spirits. The following day, Haeyi phoned Yujiya to convey his understanding of the situation. He urged Yujiya not to give up easily, emphasizing that Yuen still desired his love. Sin struggled to hold her family together. Despite Yujiya being unprepared for this conversation and hanging up, Haeyi persistently called him again and again, refusing to be turned away. One day, they picked up the kids from school to paint scenery together. However, trouble awaited them as they crossed the street. A truck, taking a break from transporting people to Ice-Sky, careened into Yuen. Moments later, the victims were taken away by ambulances. Meanwhile, Eugene received a call from Haeyi, informing him about Yuen's car accident. Startled, Eugene left his seat, fearing he might never see her again. Yujiya, filled with worry, jumped into his car and rushed to the hospital. Upon arrival, he found an empty hospital bed. The doctor sadly mentioned how young the patient was, making Eugene believe she was gone forever. Regretfully, he realized he hadn't come home all this time, and bitter tears ran down his face. However, at that moment, Yuen appeared behind him, surprising him after many years. Although her memory of him had faded, her heart remembered, and she ran into his arms, embracing him warmly. In the other room, Haeyi woke up on a hospital bed, wounded but alive. He recalled pushing Yujiya out of the way just in time before the truck collided with her. Yujiya looked at him with tears in her eyes, stopping the truck with her powers. Xia and Shu greeted him when he woke up, and as he fell asleep, he dreamt of Xiaming and Xiao Hung getting off a carousel and giving him a drawing of their shared memories. Tearfully, they said their goodbyes before disappearing into thin air when he woke up. A month later, the hospital released Haeyi. Expecting a great day, he stepped out, only to find his chicks waiting for him, Haeyi creating a chaotic atmosphere. Trying to escape, Haeyi sneaked out the back, but fell into Zuli's trap, ending up in her limousine. On the other hand, a blonde-haired girl, fueled by anger towards Haeyi, attempted to jump off a building. Afterward, the hospital bed held the sleeping blonde-haired girl. However, the competition among the other girls persisted. They had plans to aid Haeyi's recovery by giving him soup in their own ways. Later, in the hallway, a four-way deadlock unfolded as the girls rushed to his side. Much to their disappointment and shock, they found him naked with another man. Sensational Jingdong was there to assist by applying ointment, but Haeyi was being difficult about it, making the scene quite awkward. Despite this, the girls continued their rivalry over whose soup Haeyi should eat first. They presented him with impressive dishes one after another. When his twin neighbors, Tao Tao and Yuen, caught wind of the appetizing scent, they joined in, and Haeyi got the idea to make them finish all the dishes. Alone in Haeyi's room, Dong assisted him in changing his clothes. Dong spoke about the intensity of Haeyi's harem, questioning why he wasn't going out with Zuli despite his long-standing love for her. Haeyi, with a furrowed brow, expressed his reluctance to be a substitute for Zuli. He urged Dong to meet him outside after finishing changing. Once Dong left, Haeyi showered Haeyi with snacks as Haeyi tearfully confided in him about causing a rift between a couple with her magic. Hearing Haeyi's voice, Zuli burst into the room, tearing the place apart in search of her. Other girls joined in to confront Haeyi, but when Meitada was found covered, she attempted to stop time. Unfortunately, her magic only changed the girls' outfits a few times, and she eventually made them temporarily forget the incident. Later, Meitada found herself shedding tears over the possibility of transforming into a mortal. This worry stemmed from her magic powers weakening due to the prolonged chocolate incident involving Haeyi. As Haeyi attempted to exit the room, the television suddenly reported that the renowned idol Sandy had collapsed and fallen into a coma. Strangely, Sandy had spoken Haeyi's name before her collapse, revealing that she was one of the girls affected by the chocolate and had developed strong feelings for him. What set Sandy apart from the other enamored girls was her unique ability to manipulate reality using magic. In an unexpected turn, Sandy summoned Haeyi to a different realm, where she greeted him with her enchanting singing voice. When Haeyi inquired about his significance to her, Sandy, captivated by a magnetic force, declared him to be her lover, the co-owner of her dreams, and the one she wished to bring into her new world. Taking Haeyi to a rooftop, Sandy extended an invitation for both of them to jump. However, Haeyi resisted being drawn into her delusions. Instead, he extended his hand, hoping to bring her back to reality. Contrary to his intentions, Sandy disregarded his offer. As she departed from the building, she sprouted magical wings from her back, soaring into the sky. Haeyi was welcomed into Sandy's world, where fantasy and reality got mixed up as she led him around. Instead of Haeyi willingly exploring, Sandy forcefully brought him into her imaginative realm. A giant paper airplane carried them, and under the sea, creatures freely swam in the blue skies. Giant cats slept atop city buildings, and even the heavens broke into blocks as Sandy wielded. Maytada tried to calm Haeyi down by explaining that they were in Sandy's imaginary world. However, this assurance wasn't enough, especially when Haeyi was thrown off to a giant tree, discovering a portal to another dimension in its hollow. Sandy invited him to venture into another world, but Haeyi hesitated, fearing he might lose his humanity in the process. Instead, he suggested they buy ice cream. Their adventures didn't end with a cold dairy dessert, though. Haeyi found himself transported to an aquarium, where he could surprisingly breathe underwater as if it were air. Underwater creatures surrounded him as Sandy held his hand, marveling at the scenery. However, the beauty of the moment only made Sandy sad. Apart from each other, they had nobody else in this world to share these beautiful moments with. When they rose to the surface, the sense of solitude lingered. Sandy was once again questioning Haeyi if he would accompany her to the other world. Haeyi, however, slipped away from her grasp and glanced at her with sorrowful eyes. Tears streamed down her face as her world seemed to shatter, losing its vibrant colors. Concerned about preventing her from self-destructing, Haeyi suggested that they depart for the other world together the next day, managing to temporarily bring a smile to Sandy's face in reality. Returning to the real world, Maytada expressed her worry about Haeyi's decision. She informed him that the Sandy they encountered earlier was only her soul, and her physical body remained unconscious in the hospital. This implied that if her soul crossed to the other world, she wouldn't be able to return, and her body would become lifeless. Unsettled by this revelation, Haeyi needed time to contemplate how to convince her to stay in the real world. Later that night, after Haeyi finished his shower, Sandy awaited him on his bed. She presented him with a song she had written, expressing gratitude for being her steadfast supporter. Haeyi hesitated, aware that he wasn't truly the person from her memories, but Sandy insisted on giving him the gift. Afterward, she left through the window, raising concerns about her eagerness to cross over even before the planned departure the next day. Despite the risk, Haeyi and Sandy agreed on a daring plan, challenging the possibility of losing everything that defined her as a love goddess in the imaginary world. Sandy was waiting for Haeyi by the portal in the hollow of the enchanted tree. As soon as she saw him, she sank into his arms. However, her bright eyes dimmed when he mentioned that he wouldn't come with her. Instead, he expressed his desire to bring her back with him to reality. Sandy, wanting to escape the pain and ugliness of the real world, believed that the other side held only beautiful and pure things. However, Haeyi explained that beauty and ugliness coexist in both worlds, and she needed to accept this reality. Hearing this shattered all of Sandy's expectations about Haeyi, and she screamed, accusing him of not being the loyal supporter she thought he was. In distress, Sandy leapt to the portal with tears in her eyes. Haeyi screamed as he followed her to the other side. As Haeyi moved through a tunnel of memories, the story unfolded, revealing the encounter between a young boy and a girl named Yushem, also known as Sandy. At the tunnel's end, Haeyi found himself perplexed by the alternate reality that Sandy had envisioned, a stark contrast to her expectations, a realm engulfed in darkness and surrounded by an overwhelming sense of death. Witnessing Sandy's despair as she cried and sank to her knees, Haeyi extended his hand and shared the tale of a love goddess. He explained how the girls connected through this goddess discovered happiness amidst their challenging lives. Convinced by Haeyi's narrative, Sandy began to believe in the possibility of finding happiness in the real world, placing her faith in his words. Returning to reality, Haeyi contacted Linuan, urging her to craft a news article about Sandy's coma. He highlighted the agency's apparent lack of concern, leveraging Zia's extensive network to disseminate the news online, garnering sympathy from the public. Engaging Xuan, Haeyi utilized her popularity to stage a protest, rallying Sandy's fans. Taking a step further, Haeyi approached Luigi, Sandy's childhood friend, who divulged his story. Luigi revealed that Sandy, once considered a peculiar neighbor, had talent in singing. Eventually, an agency limited her social interactions and paid Luigi to keep her company. Overwhelmed by guilt, Luigi broke down, quitting his job and expressing his desire to break free from the cage that restricted Sandy. Haeyi discovered this firsthand, and to expose the agency's wrongdoing, he provided a recording of Luigi's confession to Agent Wang. Despite Wang's nonchalant reaction, Haeyi's plan continued. An urgent call informed Wang of Jai's parents attempting to halt Sandy's contract renewal, heightening the stakes. Taking Haeyi's threats more seriously, Wang sought a resolution, with Haeyi demanding only Sandy's freedom and the chance for her to lead a life surrounded by friends. Wang was laughed at by Haeyi, who mentioned that she was fortunate to be allowed to have a friend considering her peculiarities. However, as Wang prepared to leave, Haeyi presented him with photos of his mistress and warned him about disclosing the affair to his wife. Meanwhile, Zia eagerly anticipated Haeyi's call to thank her for fulfilling his request. Instead, her phone rang, reminding her of her grandfather's upcoming birthday. At that moment, the television reported that Sandy had awakened from her coma with great enthusiasm. She even grabbed a camera and called out for Haeyi to come and see her. Outside the hospital, a swarm of reporters and helicopters gathered around the entrance to capture a picture of Haeyi. However, he skillfully pretended to be a random guy, wheeling an old woman into the hospital. Navigating through the crowd, he reached Sandy's hospital room and introduced himself. As promised, Maytata, the love goddess, magically appeared before Sandy and took her on a one-day trip around the world. Perched atop Stonehenge, Maytata shared stories about Haeyi's chocolate incident and the origin of the chocolates. In the past, love goddesses used a bow and arrow, but with the introduction of memory magic in chocolate making, they collaborated to enhance the efficiency of the love business. Maytata credited a person she called the director, describing him as handsome and brilliant, for making all of this possible. Maytata also reassured Sandy about living in the real world, emphasizing that everyone would love to see and hear the real her. She mentioned Haeyi's dedicated efforts in clearing Sandy's troubles and providing support. After the magical trip, Sandy faced the media, expressing gratitude to her fans and announcing her decision to study abroad, following an agreement with the agency. Before her departure, Sandy promised a concert for her fans. Backstage on the night of the concert, Lujin, carrying a bouquet of roses, knocked on her door. He apologized for hurting her, and Sandy, touched by his sincerity, forgave him. She asked if they could be real friends now that the lies were behind them. Lujin agreed, promising unwavering support. Meanwhile, Haeyi and Maytata eagerly awaited Sandy's performance in the audience seats. Sandy, on stage, impressed them with a new song about how her life changed due to Cupid's chocolates. As she reached the song's conclusion, Sandy held Haeye's hand and whispered her gratitude into his ear. The cameras captured this intimate moment up close. The following day, Haeye found himself under the bushes, trying to escape furious fans, jealous Zueli, and probing reporters. Feeling hopeless, Miss Jai suddenly appeared with a suitcase, offering to save him in exchange for 3 months of servitude. She took him to Cafe Time, a posh place on Beijing Road, and persuaded the tired old man at the counter to let Haeye stay. Exhausted from the previous night's escape, Haeye crashed on a nearby couch. His peace was disrupted when he realized a mysterious white-haired man sat across from him. Without questioning, the man, intrigued by Haeye, handed him a fancy box of candies before leaving. Haeye, wanting to introduce the man to Zia, found him gone upon returning with her. Meanwhile, Meitata, upset that Haeye regained his happiness without her help, sulked at the dock. There, she encountered Director Roos, the head of Cupid's chocolate factory, and the enigmatic white-haired man. Despite not being part of Cupid's palace administration, the man warned Meitata about the consequences of breaking the Cupid's contract by revealing herself to mortals. Despite the warning, he decided to help her by casting a spell to control her magic, under the condition that she would no longer interfere in human affairs. While events unfolded, an unexpected date occurred between Zia and Haeye. They engaged in activities such as shopping, winning games at the arcade, and even capturing moments in a photo booth. However, on their way home, they encountered a group of thugs led by one of the girls who had previously sabotaged Xuan's dress at the anime festival. Instead of retreating, Haeye showcased his kung fu skills with speed and precision, successfully defeating all the assailants. The police arrived shortly thereafter to apprehend the thugs. Impressed by Haye's abilities, Zia complimented him, but the officer, who was taking their statement, noted that it was natural given Haye's status as the police chief's son. Despite this, Haeye walked away immediately, his eyebrows creased, contemplating his disdain for police officers. When Haeye and Zia found themselves alone on the playground, he shared with her the story of his past. He had once aspired to become a police officer, inspired by his parents. However, everything changed due to the demands of their job. His parents were consistently occupied, leaving him to celebrate birthdays and holidays in solitude. Even when their home was under attack by criminals, they couldn't come to his aid, being engaged in other cases elsewhere. Amidst this challenging situation, a glimmer of hope entered his life when he encountered Miss Jai. She cared for him as if he were her own family and made efforts to mend the strained relationship between him and his parents. Despite his gratitude for her kindness, it made only a slight impact on his life. In an attempt to convey a sense of warmth and love to Miss Jai, he pretended to have a loving family when in reality, little had changed. Hearing Haye's story, Zia was moved to tears. She hugged him and expressed her willingness to support not only him, but also the other girls during their tough times. She assured him of being there to help him achieve his dream. Haeye, in response, tightly hugged Zia back and softly whispered his gratitude into her ear. This emotional moment was observed from a distance by someone. Meanwhile, Meitata, feeling a sharp pain in her chest, couldn't help but cry as she watched Zia and Haeye grow closer. She worried about her future without Haeye by her side. Krog, Meitata's admirer from the god realm, appeared beside her. Despite his attempts to take her back home, she refused, stating that she needed to find the girl responsible for the chocolate cake incident on the rooftop. In reality, she just wanted to stay close to Haeye. Meanwhile, at the anime festival, Zia and Xuan crossed paths once more. This time, Xuan introduced Zia to her new cosplay teammates with great enthusiasm. Excitement filled the air as Xuan adorned her costume, making Zia proud that she now had friends to cosplay with. Regrettably, Xuan realized she had left the crown for her costume back at school. Undeterred by the heavy rain outside, she hurried to retrieve it. Finding herself running late, Zia selflessly offered to enter the competition dressed as a maid, buying Xuan the time she needed. To solve the crown predicament, Zia called Haeye. requesting him to fetch Xuan's crown from the school campus. On his way back, Heiyi unexpectedly encountered Mei Tada. Surprised by her tearful embrace, Heiyi learned that Mei Tada had mistakenly believed he was in love with Zia after a moment they shared in the playground. Assuring her that he and Zia were not in a romantic relationship, Mei Tada snapped out of her depression and eagerly agreed to help Heiyi with Xuan's problem. At the bus stop, Xuan was on the verge of giving up when the realization struck her that it was her team's turn to perform. Just in the nick of time, Hei appeared and placed the crown on her head. With her on his back, he transported her to the anime festival. Meanwhile, Zia, in the role of the maid Shona, awkwardly enacted a fantasy scene on stage to stall and create a diversion. Eventually, Zia made her grand entrance, continuing the performance with enthusiasm to captivate the audience. Zia's forehead was kissed by Xuan, and her arm was wrapped around by Xuan as she pointed her sword to the sky. She swore to defeat the evil King Dorsa as part of her role as Queen Dorothy. The audience roared with excitement, and their cameras flashed rapidly to capture every moment. After the event, Zia wouldn't be thanked by Xuan for her help in giving her the main dress she deeply loved. Heiyi convinced Zia to accept it, showering her with praises. Soon enough, both of them entered their own little world, making Xuan feel a little out of place. Xuan discreetly disappeared, leaving them alone. Back at Heiyi's home, his rest was interrupted by a package delivery. When he opened the door, he got buried underneath a mountain of boxes. Mei Tada was excited that all her packages had arrived. Heiyi was told by Mei Tada that all the snacks for his upcoming school camping trip were in the boxes. However, this made Heiyi stressed while packing at school because most of those snacks weren't suitable as proper meals. During this, Zia entered the classroom and asked him to write his name on a piece of paper with a red smudge in the corner, saying it was for a draw for the groupings later. This was part of Shaiwen's plan to ensure she would be in the same group with Zia and Heiyi during camping. Lin Yuan overheard this plan and decided to interfere. During the official draw, she intended to mess up the lots using a red marker. When Xuan saw multiple papers with a red smudge on the corner, she was surprised. In the end, she ended up grabbing all of them, making Zia, Heiyi, and Yuan her group members. On the way to the camping site, disagreements arose among the girls about who should be closer to Heiyi and spend more time with him. Xuan strongly supported the idea of Heiyi being paired with Zia, despite having her own romantic feelings for him. She consistently disrupted Yuan's attempts to have alone time with Heiyi. Yuan, determined not to give in easily, prepared cold dishes for the camping trip, insisting they were better for digestion. She vetoed other food options proposed by Zia, using her scientific knowledge as a tool for love. In an attempt to ease the tension, Heiyi decided to eat both their dishes. However, a sudden call from Zuli announcing her arrival startled him. As Zuli descended from a helicopter with a pile of heavy duffel bags, she asserted her dominance and marked her territory like an alpha woman. A confrontation ensued, with Zuli brandishing a sword to assert control. Their quarrel caused embers from the bonfire to scatter, igniting a fire that spread rapidly through the camp. Despite the chaos, Zuli continued her pursuit of control, while Heiyi and Yuan attempted to extinguish the flames. Zia, attempting to fetch water from the river, was swept away by the strong current. Xuan, coming to her rescue, was also carried away. Despite this, Zuli remained unyielding, prompting Yuan to slap her in an attempt to make her see reason. Zuli was warned by Yuan that Heiyi might not forgive her if something bad happened to Zia, as a result of Zuli's actions. After Heiyi returned after dark with both girls safe, Zuli, overcome with emotion, pressed her face against his chest, crying and pleading for forgiveness. Heiyi, with a gentle expression, hugged her back. Witnessing this scene made Zia realize how much Zuli loved Heiyi, making her feel sad as she didn't want to come between him and his childhood sweetheart. Once the group settled down around a new bonfire, Heiyi expressed gratitude to Yuan for finding them and taking good care of Zuli. This brought a smile to Zuli's face, and after she gave him a canned soda, The group toasted to their safety, thankful that everything had been resolved. Despite the resolution, their troubles still lingered. From a distance, Meitada observed them, feeling a sense of disappointment in herself for being unable to take any action, despite having followed them there. Tears welled up in her eyes as she considered that they might no longer require her. Meanwhile, Yuan took out 2 sleeping bags since their tents had burned down. Meitada suggested sharing them, and the girls quickly grasped the situation, or rather, the opportunity that unfolded before them. The girls persuaded Heiyi to bring just 1 sleeping bag, as he initially planned to sleep on the cold ground. They convinced him by expressing gratitude for his earlier help and wanting to repay his kindness. Zuli, however, was a bit more forward and playfully nudged him to share the sleeping bag. Eventually, they arranged the sleeping bags to create a large mat for everyone to sleep under the stars. Zia, feeling a twinge of jealousy, turned to her side as she observed Zuli comfortably snuggling up to Heiyi, who blushed while she wrapped her arms around him during her sleep. Upon waking up to a new morning, Heiyi and the girls found themselves in the midst of a heated situation. As soon as his eyes opened, Zuli and Chuan were engaged in a lively argument about Zuli's perceived flirtatious behavior. Tensions escalated when, in the heat of their disagreement, Zuli accidentally cut Zia's dress with a stray branch. Unfortunately, matters took a turn for the worse when Yuan fainted due to the fever she had caught during yesterday's incident. This occurred while she was examining the map to lead the group to the class campsite. Later, Heiyi was observed by Zuli as he placed his hand over Yuan's forehead. Recalling what Yuan had told her the previous night, Zuli thought that he might resent her for causing the recent troubles. After all, she was the one responsible for the tent catching fire and nearly causing the other 2 girls to drown in the river. As this idea crossed her mind, a helicopter suddenly descended, bringing her mother down to them. Her mother demanded that Zuli return home immediately, expressing a willingness to use force if necessary. Surprisingly, Zuli agreed without complaint and even suggested taking Yun with them to the hospital. After the chaotic camping trip, Heiyi hoped to relax at home. However, he found himself meticulously cleaning when Zia informed him that she would be coming over to return his clothes, which she had used to cover up her ripped dresser during the incident with Zuli. When someone was heard at the door by Heiyi, it was immediately opened, thinking it might be her. However, embarrassment followed when it turned out to be just Zhengdal. Attempting to close the door on him, Heiyi found resistance as Zhangdong inserted his hand and foot through the gap, threatening to throw rocks through the windows if the door wasn't opened. Feeling compelled, Heiyi had no choice but to welcome Zhengdal as a guest. Curious about Heiyi's feelings towards Zuli, especially with her ex-boyfriend Du Yuz and Zhu Jian back, Zhengdal questioned him. Heiyi, still uncertain about what to do, provoked Zhengdal, who responded by pushing him against the wall in anger. Heiyi explained that his passive attitude was hurting Zuli and would eventually hurt Zia too. Not providing a proper answer was akin to playing with their emotions. With the door fully open, Zia overheard everything, making the atmosphere tense enough for Zhangdong to leave after his outbursts. Despite the awkwardness, Heiyi tried to make Zia comfortable by smiling it all away. However, Zia became curious about Zhangdong and their relationship with Zuli. Zia was informed by Heiyi that during their childhood, he and Zuli used to spend a lot of time together as neighbors. This was because Heiyi's parents were frequently absent. Heiyi recalled those moments as the warmest and happiest times he had spent with Zuli. However, with the passage of time, Zuli changed and became more competitive, creating a sense of distance between them. Heiyi believed that she didn't genuinely enjoy his company during their middle school years, leading to a significant rift between them. Zhang Dong played a pivotal role in bridging the gap and filling the void caused by the awkwardness between Heiyi and Zuli. His energetic personality eventually completed their trio. Unfortunately, things took a messy turn when Zuli started dating Du Yuz. They spent most of their time together, often parading around with linked arms, and Zuli acted flirty, pretending not to know Heiyi. During a New Year's party, Do-Yoos publicly announced his engagement to his girlfriend Momo, revealing that Zuli was never really his girlfriend. The students, who had previously considered her arrogant, began calling her shameless and avoided her at school. This public humiliation led Zuli into a deep depression, forcing her to quit school and isolate herself in her room. In her solitude, Zuli developed a yandere personality and became obsessed with Hayayi. During one of Hayayi's visits, Zuli, with a crazy look on her face, gave him a sloppy kiss and declared that she would devote all her love to him. This revelation left Zia wondering if Hayayi had only ever seen Zuli as a friend. The following day, Yuan was visited by Hayayi at the hospital, who brought a basket of fruits as requested by Zuli. Hayayi conveyed that Zuli couldn't come, explaining that her mother was closely watching over her. Hayayi expressed his happiness that Zuli had found a friend in Yuan and mentioned that whatever Zuli had said the previous night had left a lasting impact on her. Unaware that both Zuli and Hayayi had concocted this story to prevent him from disliking them at school, Hayayi shared that Zuli intentionally stuck to him to ward off others and kept him updated on her whereabouts through text, thinking he was romantically interested. In reality, Hayayi was merely concerned about her ex-boyfriend causing trouble. Zuli's good mood took a sudden turn when she spotted Do-Yoos waiting for her at the school gate with a bouquet of flowers. Startled, her eyes widened and her legs trembled in fear. Attempting to escape, she ran to a back alley, only to be cornered by Do-Yoos. Do-Yoos exploited their past relationship to coerce her mother into financially supporting his failing company, taking advantage of her vulnerable position. The next day, Zuli skipped school and secluded herself in her room. Unfortunately, her mother dismissed it as a typical tantrum, paying no heed to Zuli's distress about being stalked by Do-Yoos. Zuli found herself recalling Yuan's words from that night, a reminder that she needed to make changes for a different outcome. When her phone rang, she immediately answered, expressing her frustration at Do-Yoos, telling him to go away. However, he threatened to harm Hayayi unless she met his demands. Despite her attempts to protest, he hung up, trapping her in a van bound for an abandoned warehouse. In the warehouse, with Do-Yoos's hands, she felt completely helpless. Trying to remain strong, she assured him that Hayayi would save her, and that she would call the police. He dismissed her optimism, stating that the police wouldn't find her so quickly since she was an adult who had only gone missing 2 hours ago. Furthermore, he reminded her of her troublesome past and being his ex-lover, predicting that nobody would be concerned about her case for a long time. Frustrated by his unsuccessful attempt to seek support from her mother for his company, Do-Yoos resorted to taking nude photos of her as blackmail. Fortunately for Zuli, Meitada revealed earlier where Zuli had been taken and brought Hayayi to her rescue, thinking that the punishment for illegal detention wasn't sufficient for Do-Yoos. Hayayi considered adding a few additional criminal charges to Do-Yoos's record to truly punish him, even at the risk of his own safety. After that, he entered the warehouse by smashing through the windows and landing, superhero-style, before them. Upon seeing the scratches on Zuli's knees and her ripped dress, Hayayi became overwhelmed by anger. However, Do-Yoos quickly used Zuli as a shield and instructed his subordinates to beat Hayayi up. Unbeknownst to them, Meitada was just above them, recording everything on her phone while stifling her cries. As the hits continued, Hayayi resisted the urge to fight back. But when one of the goons used a foldable chair to hit him, Zuli stood in the way and took the blow instead. Blood oozed from her head and dripped down to the floor, triggering her usual yandere personality. In response, she finally bit back against Do-Yoos's weak threats and revealed that she never actually loved him. Zuli recalled how the gap between her and Hayayi began when she closed the door on him, following her mother's advice to earn his affection by outperforming him in everything. Taking this seriously as a child, she tried hard, but he was consistently better. Eventually, he conceded and let her win. Although her mother praised her, she didn't feel happy as the distance between her and Hayayi increased. Despite this, her pride prevented her from confessing, leading to years of misunderstanding. In middle school, on Valentine's Day, Julie brought handmade chocolates to give to Hayai. However, when she ran into him in the hallway embarrassed, she denied they were for him and angrily walked away, deciding to give them to a senior. While crying in the classroom, she noticed Do-Yu's below through the window and impulsively gave him the chocolates. This revealed that Hayai was never the substitute for Do-Yu's. Instead, Do-Yu's had been the rebound guy from the very beginning. Julie had been holding onto the words she wanted to say to Hayai for a while. Tearfully, she finally expressed her love for him. Do-Yu's couldn't accept this, fueled by his pride. Instead of letting it go, he reminded her of the humiliation she experienced at their New Year's party. Hayai, tired of Do-Yu's behavior, apologized to Julie for his passivity and temper. They found solace in each other's embrace, creating their own world. In the background, Do-Yu's exploded in shame and anger. Tada sent a recorded video exposing his scheme to everyone in the city. Hayai skillfully dealt with the goons using his kung fu, while Julie fiercely fought them off. The police arrived, arresting the culprits, but Do-Yu's, being a sore loser, grabbed a knife and lunged at Hayai. Julie shielded him and got stabbed. The police called for an ambulance. In the hospital, Julie, on the brink of death, confessed her love and gratitude to Hayai. Zia comforted Hayai, who blamed himself for not noticing her feelings sooner. Julie's parents arrived. Her mother blamed Hayai, but her father thanked him for helping their daughter. When Julie woke up, she couldn't remember Hayai. Her parents went to call a doctor, leaving them alone. Hayai reintroduced himself, promising to protect her forever, moving her to tears. However, it turned out she was pretending, wanting him all to herself. The moment seemed to return to normal until a white-haired girl appeared, disrupting everything. Ling Xiadu, Hayai's cousin, showed a strong liking for him, much like Julie did. However, there was a unique aspect to her affection. Her presence created tension in the harem, transforming the hospital room into a chaotic scene. Amidst the threatening atmosphere, a conflict erupted among the women. Hayai and Ling Xiadu managed to escape the turmoil and rushed to his apartment, spending the night together. The next morning, Sandy unexpectedly visited Hayai, unintentionally attracting a crowd of reporters seeking a scandal. Surprisingly, Xiadu, a fan of Sandy's, overlooked her previous anger and joined forces with Sandy. Faced with the prospect of another scandal, Hayai felt downcast. Xiadu and Sandy devised a plan. Hayai would dress up as a girl, posing as Sandy's friend visiting school. Despite being the center of attention once again, Hayai faced accusations of being involved with his cousin, and he chose not to defend himself, worn out by the harem's constant drama. Later, Zia confronted Xiadu on the rooftop, inquiring about Hayai's secrets, his relationship with his parents, and more. Xiadu, surprised by Zia's knowledge, became more assertive. In the confrontation, Xiadu declared herself as Hayai's first girlfriend, making Zia step back, trip, and make the bold proclamation. After that, the matter was discussed by Zia with Yuan and Xuan, who were uncertain about what to think. They decided to approach Zhengdong when he passed by, but he only provided a vague answer. Zhengdong mentioned that Xiadu and Hayai indeed had a relationship, but suggested it would be better if they asked him directly. He pointed out that by now, they should already be familiar with Hayai's character and shouldn't have doubts about him after all this time. Xiadu, who had been eavesdropping from a nearby alley, invited them for a drink at a cafe, where she revealed everything about her relationship with Hayai. Simultaneously, Hayai shared with Tada details about his connection with Xiadu. He explained that despite her seemingly mean-spirited appearance, she was actually a kind and gentle soul. Hayai recounted an incident from his childhood, when Xiadu found him heartbroken in his apartment after an attempted kidnapping. This led him to discard his cherished police badge and abandon his dream of becoming a policeman, as his father failed to come to his rescue when he needed it the most. Although Xiaoto didn't fully comprehend Hayai's pain, she attempted to distract him from his tears by suggesting they play games or asking for a story. However, the wounds in his heart were too deep. During a summer stage drama, Haeyi found himself alone since none of his classmates wanted to partner with him. His aloof teachers scolded him, instructing him not to waste everyone's time. Each passing second felt like an hour to him. Yet, all his worries dissipated when Xayadu, who had earlier agreed to play the girlfriend role in the play, arrived in a cute dress to uplift his spirits. Since then, Xayadu has looked after Haeyi as if she were the older sister, despite Haeyi being expected to act as the mature and strong older sibling. She even facilitated the friendship between him and Jengdol by forcefully bringing him back to the classroom when he skipped his cleaning duty. Overhearing Haeyi covering for him when their teacher scolded Jengdol for the still dirty classroom after school hours, Jengdol was touched by Haeyi's kindness and helped him clean up, leading to their friendship. Soon after, Xayadu found herself having to pursue studies in the US. She would only occasionally return to her hometown to visit relatives. Over time, the girls came to understand her intentions, and they apologized for the previous misunderstandings. Xayadu's visit to Haeyi was specifically motivated by her concern for him. However, upon getting to know the girls, she felt content, knowing that he now had friends to look after him. As she departed for the US, the girls saw her off at the airport. Xayadu, without saying goodbye to Haeyi in person, sent him a text message from her seat on the plane, expressing her happiness that he was no longer alone. She apologized for the abrupt departure and sighed as she turned off her phone for the flight. Despite knowing he wouldn't make it, the girls encouraged Haeyi not to give up. Even though Xia offered to drive him there in her car, he was determined not to give up, remembering how he never gave up when the girls needed his help. Now, it was his turn to return the favor. Xayadu's location was the destination they were heading to, and the high-speed chase included Zuli as a participant as they drove rapidly. She deliberately collided with the pursuing patrol car. Xia instructed her driver to break through the barricade, opting for an illegal shortcut to reach the orchard and catch the plane. Meitada supported them with magic during takeoff. From the sunroof of the car driving alongside the aircraft, Haeyi called out to Xayadu. Meitada used her magic to transmit Haeyi's voice directly into Xayadu's ear. When Xayadu looked at Haeyi through the plane window, her eyes welled up with tears. Even without words, she sensed he would be fine. But he reassured her, expressing gratitude to his dear friend. As the plane departed, Xayadu's harem greeted him with smiles, assuring him that everything would be fine. The sun setting behind him, Xayadu's wind conveyed thanks reached his dear friend, who was now out of sight. However, Zuli seized the moment and went for a kiss, sparking a usual fight with Xuan. The other girls joined in the chaos. From the god realm above, Meitada observed, mentioning that Haeyi still had unresolved matters with Cupid's chocolates, indicating their journey was far from over.